The Institute and Basic Life Principles. A fringe cult that dominates headlines when reality TV show stars who were former members and faces of the cult now face years in prison. The Institute and Basic Life Principles seems delegated to the corners of Reddit and gossip sites and has almost seemingly vanished from the public eye as its membership and revenues has dwindled rapidly over the last decade. But for those of us who lived through it, we know that the Institute and Basic Life Principles never really goes away and that its pernicious claws have invaded many aspects of American society and even around the world. Hi, I'm Elizabeth and I overshare on the internet. Welcome to my channel. Over 2 years ago, I filmed a part 1 of the rise of the Institute and Basic Life Principles cult, where I dug deep into Bill Gothard, the basic seminar, the 7 basic principles of IBLP, and some of its programs and how it controlled its membership. Today, I'm very excited that 2 years later, I'm now doing part 2. Are you ready to dive in? Because I've been diving in and I cannot wait to get this video out there because I have learned so much, even as a former member of IBLP and someone who grew up in the cult. There has been information that has truly shocked me as I've dug deep into IBLP. So are you ready for it? In part 1, I shared an overview of the IBLP cult and its founder, Bill Gothard. At first, in writing this video, I wanted to share more about the fall of the IBLP cult. My idea was to trace the timeline of IBLP from around 2001 and follow that path to today. The financial successes and pitfalls, the resignations and lawsuits, and the public-facing scandal that many of us know from the Duggars. But in doing research, I realized that I was ahead of myself. We have so much more to talk about when it comes to the Institute and Basic Life Principles influence in the world. I thought of myself as pretty knowledgeable of IBLP, having grown up in it and living through the early 2000s as a member of the IBLP cult. But IBLP is a vast network that successfully reached into many American cities, legislation, and families. Instead of tackling how IBLP fell dramatically from grace, we're going to first dive into the vast spiderweb of IBLP's influence. The timeline is still helpful, so we'll start around 2000, where I originally planned to begin this video. We may go backward a bit into the 1990s, but this video will primarily follow the influence of IBLP from the early 2000s to 2009. I'm ending this video right after the premiere of the Duggars' 19 Kids and Counting because that is when IBLP became mainstream in the public eye. It also launched the downfall of IBLP, even as it appears 19 Kids is Counting is providing its biggest stage yet. So let's get into it. What is the state of IBLP in 2001? In 2001, IBLP claims more than 10,000 people have attended their annual family conference. IBLP claims that more than 2.5 million people have gone through the basic seminar. According to public records in 2001, IBLP raked in $41 million in revenue. Now, 14.9 million of that was from official IBLP services. And IBLP was operating out of a dozen or so training centers around the world. Now, what exactly were these training centers? It is very difficult to find out real data about the training centers because IBLP doesn't like us to. What I can find is random news articles here and there and old Reddit threads that mention a training center or two that I then researched further. IBLP has no dedicated information on their former properties and seems to deliberately hide them. I do have quite a few sources linked in the description of today's video, so please check them out if you want to read dozens of articles. Now, speaking of sources, I did find a chart on the blog Heresy in the Heartlands that is extremely helpful. This is one of the best charts I've ever seen in my life that shares more about what each training center was used for. You may notice there are even question marks next to some of these training centers and their locations because it is difficult to even track what kind of IBLP was going on. As you can see, there are international cities on the chart. We will get to discuss those in a bit. All of these training centers had a purpose. Some were more public-facing than others. Some pretended to be something else entirely. And what can you expect in today's video? I'm going to be breaking each of these training centers down into the different programs that were operated and how they were used to groom people both inside IBLP and even groom people outside of it by infiltrating parts of secular society, such as your local public school and city councils. For today's video, I've broken down IBLP into 3 categories. the public-facing training centers with public-facing programs that they use to infiltrate society, their internal training centers that they use to groom children, and their higher education centers that they use to outreach to adults. Some of these training centers were entirely devoted to one of those purposes, while others were a mix of all of those purposes. But first, for today's video, we're going to dive into the public-facing aspects of the IBLP cult training centers. In 1996, a chairman of the IBLP board of directors took Bill Gothard's 49 character qualities and sanitized them for secular use. Tom Hill was an Oklahoma gas and oil tycoon, and he was a personal friend of Bill Gothard. Oil and gas tycoons, the very best of people. Hill saw the character qualities as an opportunity for the corporate world to create an ambitious self-improvement program. Hill saw potential for selling this character training package to other corporations, as a true oil and gas tycoon would, and he created a model for corporations and nonprofits, including government offices, to use these character traits. Hill claimed that when he brought Gothard's character training to his company of Kimmery, I don't know how to say it, Kimmery, it's an oil and gas company, his business saw a 90% drop in workers' compensations claimed and a 60 to 70% drop in turnover.
Here is Tom Hill, founder of the Character Training Institute.
In the early 90s, we realized that many of the problems we faced in our company were really character problems, whether it was lack of safety, low productivity, poor morale, disputes among employees. You could trace any of these outward actions to a lack of character on the inside. So we started focusing on character in our company, which was new for us because we had always focused so much on achievement.
Hill claimed that other local companies were soon asking him to teach these character traits to them, which eventually led to him creating the Character First program, which is known as the Character Training Institute. The Character Institute began as Character First. It was a children's educational resource. According to Character Training Institute advocate Dr. Joseph Ahn, the program does use religious symbols as it is biblically placed. But Dr. Ahn stated, we use character first because we can't take religion into schools. But it's all based on the same thing. So there you have it, folks. It's just the Bible brainwashed as character.
Consider this tree with its sprawling branches and deep roots. Do some of these visible challenges look familiar to you? How about disruptions in the classroom or poor concentration? Do your children experience fighting, accidents, or do they abuse alcohol or drugs? Many times we try to address these problems by themselves, but a closer look reveals that they are actually symptoms of a deeper need, the need for character.
It was then expanded into a program for public officials to adopt called the International Association of Character Cities, the most ridiculous name you've ever heard, IACC. I don't know what I'm going to call it this video. It's too long. As you can see in this promotional video from 1998, the CTI, the Character Training Institute, even started an annual conference to recruit mayors into the IACC. In the program's brochure, CTI founder Thomas Hill wrote, "Leaders around the world are increasingly concerned by the decline in society's standards." I'm imagining an Oklahoma oil gas tycoon voice here. "Where did the good old days go? And how did we get to this point? The answer is rooted in growing lack of personal character." I am laughing at myself. That was ridiculous. As part of this program, CTI encouraged city councils to become cities of characters. I think I missaid CTI. It was CIA that did that. This is from an article on the CTI conference in 2006. I love this article. It was titled "The Cult of Character" and was the best thing I've ever read. This is a quote directly from the article about their Cities of Character conference. Inside the Institute, Arizona State Treasurer David Peterson takes to the conference podium to tell how his state's Family Services Committee passed character education legislation. "All schools now have it implemented," he says proudly. "We're fighting for the soul of this nation." Peterson is not being hyperbolic. He attributes his passion for character to a personal meeting with evangelist Bill Gothard. The article goes on to say, although legally and fiscally independent, the CTI is a secular front for Gothard's IBLP. In the last decade, the CTI has quietly gained entry into hundreds of elementary, middle school, and high school state and city offices, as well as corporations, police departments, and even jails. Keep in mind, in 2010, the Education Department actually spent time on a research project on character training in education, and in this 2010 study, the U.S. Department of Education found that the vast majority of character education programs in schools have actually failed. They have proven to be ineffective and produced no improvements in student behavior or academic performance. I did not have time to read the full study, but I have it linked below. The fact that character education doesn't actually work didn't stop prominent politicians from promoting it. And today, Character First still exists. It's now a division of Strata Leadership. And yes, it's all based in Oklahoma, which was where the Oklahoma Training Center was. It is still used in schools around the country. For example, the Colorado Department of Education has Strata Leadership linked as a resource for bullying prevention. Winding back the clock, Sarah Palin promoted Cities of Character in Alaska while running for Vice President of the U.S. in 2008. Thank God she didn't win. Her actions can be traced back to her actually attending an IACC conference in Indianapolis with Bill Gothard during her second term as mayor of Wasilla in 2000. So yes, I'm dropping a reference to another training center, Indianapolis. We're going to touch on Indianapolis quite a bit, but not at this second. Palin left Indianapolis and got her city council to adopt this resolution. The resolution pledged that the city would do all in its power to promote positive and constructive character qualities, which distinguished between right and wrong, which the resolution predicted could work in a range of wonders, from reducing juvenile delinquency to increasing corporate profits in Wasilla. Salon, love you Salon, actually did a deep dive into Sarah Palin's time as mayor and her involvement in the IBLP cult. In 2008, they published an article titled Sarah Palin, Faith-Based Mayor, How the Vice Presidential Nominee Brought Fringe Biblical Teachings to Her Work as Chief of Wasilla, Alaska. It's interesting, I would never have heard of Wasilla, Alaska if Sarah Palin hadn't run for vice president. Sandy Holliday, who heads the Alaska's Councils of Character, yes, that's a whole character thing, which works with the IACC to encourage more municipalities to become cities of character, notes ways in which the teachings permeate the town's government under Palin. Holliday, who said she met Palin once in 2001, said she recalled that Wasilla put the teachings Character Quality of the Month on city employees' paychecks. Love to see the lack of separation of church and state. They also put it on utility bills and displayed posters provided by CTI. Utility bills in Wasilla began bearing the words, Wasilla, a city of character. Help us promote good character in our community. My favorite moments from this article reads a little bit like a fever dream. The IACC director, Stephen Menzel, who's also a member of the IBLP board of directors, speaks of Sarah Palin saying, quote, Palin exhibited the character qualities of discernment after she took in the program at the Indianapolis conference in 2000. She immediately returned to Wasilla and implemented it. Menzel described discernment as, quote, understanding the deeper reason of why things happen, directly from Bill Gothard. Now, Gothard in ATI describes it as the God-given ability to understand why things happen. So you can see how it's sanitized from understanding the God-given ability to understanding the deeper reason, but we all know. Now, more than 200 cities signed up as cities of character, and the program's impact still lingers because yours truly had to look into it. The city of Owasso in Oklahoma still has a new character trait displayed each month on the city's homepage. I Googled it. I Googled cities of character and Owasso popped up. The character trait for July, this July 2024, is loyalty. They had a whole page on it. Now, the character cities were not limited to the U.S. Owasso still brags on their homepage that not only are they a city of character, but they were visited by delegates from 5 different countries seeking to start their own character cities. In the mid-2000s or 90s, I actually don't know the timing for this, IAC claimed at one point there were 171 character cities in the US and 48 internationally. And the IACC and the CTI didn't just stop in city halls. The program spread, where else? To police departments. We have to talk about police dynamics. This is also from the Cult of Character article. Each of the 49 character qualities in CTI's secular material have their exact counterpart in IBLP materials. In books like Gothard's Power of Kingdom Living and the Sevenfold Power... What in the world are these names? Sorry. And the Sevenfold Power of First Century Churches and Homes, they are typically referred to as the Laws of the Kingdom. The IBLP's Blue Book, formerly titled The Power for True Success, I remember us, my family, owning that book. It's carried around by many IACC officials. It explains the imperative for learning the 49 character qualities this way. Character reveals the Lord Jesus Christ, since he is the personification of all good character. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that definition. It continues, understanding character explains why things happen to us, because all things work together for good to those who love. I was going to finish quoting the verse, but that is not what the verse says, but this is what he says. All things work together for good to conform us to the character of Christ. Little side note, the Bible verse says all things work together for good to those who know Jesus or something like that. It doesn't, my phone is being used as my teleprompter, but I've got to look this up because I'm like, it's so funky when you see it in real time, how Gothard twisted scripture to make him sound like an expert. Looking at the Bible verse, it says, in the King James, because that's the only version of the Bible Gothard would use, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. And Gothard says in this book, all things work together for good to those to conform us to the character of Christ. I just think that's interesting. Okay, back to police departments. Why are we saying this about the book? Because at the time of the article, when it came out in 2006, this book is now in the hands of at least 1,200 officers in Cincinnati, courtesy of a life insurance salesman and CTI cheerleader named Mike Daly, who along with Phil Heimlich helped turn Cincinnati into a city of character. The two men worked hand in hand to implement the CTI training into nearly all facets of government and secondary education in Cincinnati. During one of his trainings, Daly gifted curious officers with the religious books while telling them to become apostles of character. In the Blue Book and other IBLP materials, the 49 characters' qualities talk a more strident and extremist tone than what CTI said. In his book, Gothard defines obedience as the freedom to be creative under the protection of divinely appointed authorities. All legitimate authority comes from God. He is the one who sets up rulers and takes them down. Imagine why they would be handing this out to police officers. He goes on to say, God ordained government to carry out his will in matters of justice. Quote, those who violate God's law are like citizens who commit crimes, end quote. Gothard explains in his book, The Sevenfold Power, they are still citizens, but they lose certain rights and privileges that they otherwise might have enjoyed. Where have I heard that before? Oh yes, my father, quoting Gothard. Apparently, the sinners and the criminals are one and the same. In recent years as of this article, IBLP has expanded into highly controversial religious juvenile boot camps and most recently into a partnership with the private prison company, the Corrections Corporation of America, which has announced its intention to bring Gothard's teaching to all of the prisons its own. We get to talk about my favorite man I learned about today, South Carolina Sheriff Ray Nash, who is a CTI instructor. His 43-minute talk, Character Standards for Police Officers, is still on sale in the IBLP online store as of July 8th at 3:36 p.m. when I checked the link. Nash spoke about the CTI law enforcement training named Police that he named, I'm actually not sure if he named it or Gothard named it, Police Dynamics, in 2004 to the website Renew America. He said, really what Police Dynamics is a nutshell, is biblical wisdom that's been packaged into a law enforcement message. I don't know why I think of that as a South Carolina accent. Maybe I'm wrong. Nash bragged that he implemented character training into his time as sheriff in Dorchester County, South Carolina, which is why my favorite thing I learned today, I found an article from the Post and Courier of Charleston, which is Dorchester County, in 2009. The Post and Courier lets us know about Nash's wrongdoing by talking about the newly elected Sheriff L.C. Knight. The article says, Dorchester County Sheriff L.C. Knight has hit the ground running his first week in office, working to live up the promise to revamp a department rocked with allegations of embezzlement and constant budget battles with the council. He did succeed Sheriff Ray Nash, who was a 3-term sheriff who declined to run again after an audit showed almost $360,000 were missing from a jail fund overseen by his former jail chief. $360,000, that's insane. Nash was not implicated, but said he was wrong to put too much trust into one person. Knight said the incident showed that Nash's Bible-based character training program, which was mandatory for all employees under Nash, was a waste of money. Killing the program was one of Knight's first official acts. I put an end to that yesterday, Knight said. This was only his second day in office. And I also advised them that anyone who didn't have character probably wouldn't work for me. I just love this night guy. I love South Carolina politics, and, well, I love to hate it, and I love this article. It gives me so much information. So I did a deep dive. So I looked into the extent of Nash's corruption that the posting carrier tracked during his time as sheriff, while also promoting police dynamics for Bill Gothard around the country. He paid his brother-in-law $65,000 over 2 years to keep up with the department's computer system. In 2004, what was even a computer system? He also paid his former campaign manager $1,500 a month to be a jail cop. He also spent more than $8,000 on flight training at the Alert IBLP campus in Texas. The checks included payments for hotel accommodations and a rental car for the Alert team. Now, Nash told investigators that Alert actually gave them the flight training for free to his officers. What was the $8,000 for? So he was asked about a check for $2,200 he made out to Alert that he said he didn't remember the details, but it must have been to help cover the team's expenses. How convenient. Now, Nash is still around because I had to look him up. I found his LinkedIn. He's running the Police Dynamics Institute based out of Charleston. And when I checked the website, it seems to focus today on polygraph testing, which I think has been pretty much debunked. So it's very interesting to me that it's like a whole institute of polygraph testing. And he also has the police dynamics course, which I think is still to do with character training, but I'm not going to pay to take this man's police dynamics course. No way. I did find it amusing that my crazy brother, who is indoctrinated in his own crazy ways, is a mutual of this guy on LinkedIn. Red flag for both my brother and this man. All of that character training, the CTI and the CIAA, the craziest names, purposefully, laboriously confusing. Having a character training institute that runs a CIAA, very laboriously confusing, was run out of the Oklahoma Training Center in Oklahoma City. I did not research how IBLP got the Oklahoma Training Center. If I find that information, I will add that in because I do have that information for the Little Rock Training Center. And I think it's fascinating to find how IBLP acquired these properties. So I'm going to look into that and add that as a little voiceover if I find it. IBLP's political and cultural connection to politics does not end in Oklahoma. He moved on to a new target. He didn't move on. At the same time, he was moving in on a new target next door to Oklahoma in Arkansas. How did Gothard and IBLP end up in Little Rock, Arkansas? For that, we can thank Hobby Lobby. Their web connects us all. The Arkansas Times writes about Gothard's presence in Little Rock in this article that was published after Shiny Happy People came out. Thank you to local journalists. We love you for doing your job. Gothard's presence here can be tracked to his leadership with former Little Rock Mayor Jim Daly. It was Daly's idea for Gothard to create a facility in Little Rock to promote faith-based products. Always faith-based, as a front. Hobby Lobby donated the VA building to Gothard in 2000, and Gothard began renovations on the 529,000 square foot building. He said he would use the building as a juvenile center, an orphanage for foreign children, and a base for growing his ministry in Arkansas. In Little Rock, Gothard flexed his burgeoning political muscles, courting a relationship with then Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. It proved to be a profitable relationship for Gothard. For years, Gothard cultivated close ties to Huckabee, who was an alumni of Gothard's basic seminar, alongside Jim Daly, the former mentioned mayor of Little Rock. With encouragement from the mayor, Gothard opened his Little Rock Training Center in the empty VA hospital, again from the Arkansas Times on the training center. The training center features a huge but unmanned and quiet wood-paneled lobby with a maroon carpeting and chairs upholstered in white fabric. It employs 7 people, Director R.T. Spivey said. It serves the chaplains in the IBLP's PAL prison program. At one time, the training center operated the Integrity Construction Institute for Young Men, but that program was moved to Alpena. I need to look further into this later on. I believe that program sounds familiar. It may sound familiar to you because I believe that's where Josh Duggar was sent to rehab after he admitted to abusing his sisters. In 2002, the Little Rock Police Department's Downtown Patrol and Special Operations Division moved into 12,000 square feet of renovated space on the ground floor of the Little Rock Training Center. Now, Gothard did pay for the renovation, and he leased the space to the city for just $1 a year. How generous. In 2020, IBLP ended up selling the building, closing a chapter on Gothard's Arkansas political connections. And what's funny to me is Mike Huckabee cannot stand Bill Gothard. Bill Gothard has used him to sell the Character First training. He's used him to sell the IACC, the Character Cities thing, and Huckabee's staff are constantly like, stop using our name to market your products, and Gothard just won't let Mike Huckabee go. Mike Huckabee will forever be linked to the cult he hates to be linked to. I say he hates to be linked to because Huckabee doesn't deny many things. He just seems to like own his conservative Christian, feelings. But he loves to come out and hate on Bill Gothard. Say, I'm not connected to Bill Gothard. But he's connected. They're the connection. He went to the basic seminar and he continued to be friends with Bill Gothard after. He knows what he's doing. He only stopped being connected to Gothard after the Duggars' disgrace. And he defended the Duggars. So yeah, Huckabee knows what he's doing. Gothard had training centers all over the country, and some were more politically connected and some were vaguely connected. One center that was, if you didn't know it was connected to politics, you wouldn't know because it didn't seem to be connected politically on the outside, but was very internally connected. And that is Indianapolis. How in the world did Gothard get property in Indianapolis? You can thank the former mayor. During his first 2 terms of mayor of Indianapolis, Stephen Goldsmith partnered with Gothard to create the Indianapolis Training Center. He sold a city-owned building to IBLP for just a token of $1 in 1993. That's the year before I was born. Makes me feel old. During his unsuccessful bid for governor, ITC staff, many of them minors, most from other states, most were not salaried by the nonprofit IBLP, and many of them paid for the opportunity to work there, assisted Goldsmith's mayoral campaign, running a mailing center from the top floor of the hotel and handing out campaign literature at polling places on election day. Some of the staff members of the Indianapolis Training Center even registered to vote in Marion County to support Goldsmith. Now, George W. Bush later made Goldsmith his chief domestic policy advisor. Goldsmith helped formulate the president's faith-based initiatives, which gave tax dollars to churches. That was a huge part of Bush's life. Taking taxpayer dollars and giving them to faith-based nonprofits was like a big deal of the Bush administration. We should get into that sometime, but not now. In 2010, New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg chose Goldsmith to be his deputy mayor of operations, a position which included oversight of law enforcement agents. Now, Goldsmith's domestic policy came into question when he was arrested for none other than assaulting his wife, Margaret. Now, Margaret has an interesting connection. In Indianapolis, she had worked for the juvenile court judge James Payne, who used his court to send delinquents to either Marion County's juvenile detention or to the IBLP Indianapolis Training Center as an alternative to juvenile detention. There are so many stories of young adults who were sent here and that it went very poorly. Now, there were investigations into allegations of child abuse at the ITC, and Judge Payne was made director of the Indiana Department of Child Services, a post from which he resigned after charges of interference with a DCS neglect case involving his grandchildren, the very best of people. We will get into the various ways training centers were used to indoctrinate and abuse children, but not at this moment because this video is dedicated to like the political maneuverings of the Institute in Basic Life Principles and how it intercepted in life outside of cult arenas, specifically the training centers, and more of how it impacted like civil life that you would be unaware that you were being impacted by IBLP because you wouldn't have known your mayor was friends with a cult leader and introducing character first education into your public schools. You would just think this was a character program and not know that it was directly tied to the Institute in Basic Life Principles. Now, when I saw Jacksonville on the list of places that had a IBLP training center, I thought that was funny because I was like, wait a second, Jacksonville didn't have any Institute in Basic Life Principles training center that I'm aware of. And it technically did not, but it did have political influence. With support from Jacksonville Rep. Stephen Wise and Orlando Congressman Dan Webster, Gothard considered building a similar youth program to what he had in Indianapolis in Jacksonville. Though that never materialized, Jacksonville children were sent by the court system to the correctional residential program at the Indianapolis Training Center. I cannot fathom. That is so horrible for these kids. In a future video, we'll get into what those programs were like for the poor children who were put through them, but not for now. Now, according to the Colt Education Institute, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, police clap, implemented Gothard's controversial character education program Character First at his own charter school in Liberty City. Governor also publicly encouraged the Palm Beach County School Board to approve Character First, which is also listed as a model program in Florida state law. Very best in Florida. Okay, that felt like ages to film, and my shoulders are so tight right now. Sometimes I get really tight shoulders when I'm doing something that's intensive at work, and instead of being something intensive at work, it's literally filming this video about the Institute and Basic Life Principles. Anyway, I can't believe I'm going to make a second part to this video. I had only planned to make one ATI video. Advanced Training Institute is the homeschool wing of the Institute and Basic Life Principles. And as someone who grew up in IBLP, I grew up calling it ATI because that was the name of the homeschooling curriculum. But it is, ATI is no longer, it was canceled. It was like they shelved it as a homeschool curriculum. So it's just the Institute and Basic Life Principles that exists today. They no longer claim to be a homeschool curriculum, which we will talk about in the video on the fall of IBLP. What I wanted to do was make one video on the rise and one video on the fall. But when I sat down, I realized there's so much more to the depth and breadth of IBLP's existence that I needed to make this video on the training centers and what they were used for and how they impacted society. But as I got into it, I realized the training centers are vast and have numerous scandals attached and invaded all sorts of parts of regular life and international life. So I thought, we'll talk about policy, youth, and education. But if I add the youth section to this video, I'll be researching for 2 more weeks and this video will not get done. And then if I add the higher education part, that's another huge aspect. And this video is already almost 30 minutes. So that's like an hour and a half long video. And I have never successfully edited, researched, or done an hour and a half. That's just not my style. I'm not a long form content creator. I'm a mid form content creator. So we're going to do this mid-sized video and now. So stay tuned because I am in the mood to research. So I will have a part 3 on the youth programs of IBLP, the Institute and Basic Life Principle. And what's interesting is I knew about the training centers in this program. I knew about the training centers in this video. I knew that Little Rock existed. I knew that Oklahoma City existed. I knew that Indianapolis existed, but I never participated in anything that happened in those training centers. But for our youth programs, for the cult indoctrination of IBLP children, I was heavily involved because I lived at one of the training centers for 3 months. I had family who went through the Alert Academy, and it almost went to an IBLP distance learning school for my higher education. So I feel very excited in a twisted form of way to talk about something that I lived through and that I have firsthand knowledge of, where I don't have firsthand knowledge of Character First in Oklahoma City, or the mayor and Gothard's dealings in Indianapolis, or Jeb Bush's dealings with Bill Gothard in Florida. Anyway, I hope you're as excited as I am, because that would make 2 very excited people, and we love excited people. And thanks for watching. If you would like to support the channel, you can always subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what you thought. Let me know if you learned anything from today's video, because my mind was blown. I literally was gagged multiple times writing this. I was like, you're telling me there was a police training program that used Gothard that the entire city of Cincinnati adopted? What? Anyway, huge shout out to all of the local papers and journalists that I used to write this video. In my last video on unschooling, someone literally fussed at me for using Wikipedia. And I wanted to say I barely used Wikipedia in this video, so please clap. I get to use my favorite Jeb Bush reference twice in one video. And to the person who said that you can't use Wikipedia for research, Did you ever know that you can scroll to the bottom of the Wikipedia article and read all of the sources that are linked there? So when I looked up the IACC and found their Wikipedia page, I didn't know it existed. So I scrolled through the bottom and I found the Cult of Character article that I cited throughout this video. And it was linked on a Wikipedia page. So don't be elitist. Wikipedia will open your mind to the world of research that's out there. Anyway, to that person, you're a hater. I hate you too. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time on the internet where I will overshare again. That's the only thing I can promise to be consistent, is that I will overshare. Thanks for watching. See ya.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.